So with that, let's go ahead and dive in. I'm going to do just a couple of reminders up front for those of you who weren't able to join us at the first session, and also share some updated dates here. As we mentioned, the Attendance Solutions Network is a four-part series followed by a few other pieces. So I just wanted to remind you about the recording. We'll put out recording for today as well. And then please to mark your calendar for August 6th and August 13th. And of course, we want you to be thinking about your colleagues who are close to the work who may also want to join for those sessions coming up. So do keep that in mind. And for updated information, you can use the link there related to the website, the landing page that we've created for this. So keep an eye out there for updates as well. I also wanted to update you. Last time we met, we spoke about the opportunity to extend beyond the webinar series and to extend the conversation should you choose to. So actually, beginning next week, Tuesday, July 30th, and Thursday, August 1st, we wanted to open it up for some small group problem solving discussions. Again, these are optional. Should you have questions about some of the pieces today or from Tuesday, do you want to lift up a problem that you have to your peers? We welcome you to join. And again, this is just an opportunity to continue the conversation. So join if you can, join if you'd like. There'll be registration links there in the chat for you, and we'll put these back out again when we're done with the session for today. So excited to have those of you who can come and who want to continue the conversation. We're also going to start the peer-to-peer learning community. Beginning September 17th. I'm also going to be fielding some times with everyone just to see if we can get to some sort of consensus about when would be a good time. So look for some information to follow about that. But you can mark your calendar now for September 17th. All right. And now I'd like to introduce Dr. Bob Balfanz, our director at the Everyone Graduates Center, the School of Education, Johns Hopkins University, to take it away. You ready, Dr. Bob?
Yeah, thanks, Jen.
Sure.
Good afternoon, everybody. We're happy to be back with you here today. In our first session on Tuesday, we talked about how you build a comprehensive approach to chronic absenteeism and how, given the scale and intensity of the challenges we're facing, a comprehensive approach is really needed. And this really had four components. One was just believing improvement is possible, and then really understanding your challenge, organizing your response, and gathering and aligning your resources. And today we're going to do a deep dive on organizing your response, and in particular, on the next slide, the idea of prevention, right? We talked about when in a systematic approach, as we organize our response, once we understand our challenges and understand the reasons kids aren't coming to school, we're going to have to combine prevention, problem solving, and mitigation supported by district and school teams with actionable data. And prevention, we talked about and will further echo today, is really essential given the scale of the problem. When a school has 100, 150, 200, even 75 chronically absent kids, that sort of exceeds often existing student support systems that are aimed at more individualized solutions. So we know we have to drive down the number of kids that are becoming chronically absent in order to be able to address the problem overall. And we're going to really focus today on some good, deeper dive on some good evidence-based prevention strategies. And most excitingly, hear from two districts that are putting these into action, and then give you a chance to learn from each other. Next slide. All right, so prevention, another way to think about prevention is really you're creating a culture of regular attendance. And this is something like, we often think of, that was something we always thought about in the past, right? We just assumed the kids would come. And we really know post-pandemic, for a lot of reasons, we really have to put work to create that culture of regular attendance and remind people how important it is to be in the building every day, both for themselves and for everybody else in the building. So when we talked about some, we know there's some good practices here, and we're going to dive deeper into them today. So if we go to the next slide, I mentioned last week this idea of Tuesday, this idea of school connectedness. This idea when kids are connected to school, they're more likely to be there. And the reason we also know is that it's actually just vital to youth health to be connected to school. It's as close as we have as a universal prevention measure for almost everything, right? It improves attendance, it improves mental health, and it increases middle and high school grades and graduation and college enrollment. So what do we mean by this, right? At its heart, school connectedness is a student believing, right, that I'm welcome, wanted, cared about, and needed in school. And as a result, it's a place I want to be. And just think about that in your own lives, right? The places where you feel welcome, wanted, cared about, and needed are the places you prioritize being, right? You push through obstacles to get there, right? You don't just say, it's not the day, I'm just gonna not be there. I'm gonna, just be somewhere else. So okay, how could schools increase this? Let's get really practical now. So we know the first element of being connected to school is to know there's an adult that knows and believes about you as a person. And we also know from research that really to maintain these strong relationships, we're talking about on the order of 2 short and maybe 1 longer interaction a week, right? So the short interactions can be very short, right? Jen, it's so great to see you in school today. It just makes my day when I see you. Are you ready for a great day? Anything I can do to make sure it is a great day? I'm going to expect to see you tomorrow. And if I don't see you, I'm going to figure out a way to get you here. All right. Go at it, right? 15 seconds. But that helps maintain that connection that somebody knows and cares about me. And then you need some longer interactions along the way to keep that going. Very useful tool that schools can use, and we'll share some examples of this. And there's a link we'll share in the tools and resources. This idea of a relationship audit to understand what is our current view, what is the current ecosystem of our relationships? How many kids feel like they have an adult who knows and cares about them as a person? How many of our kids feel like they have a supportive peer group? There's just ways, and a number of folks have built tools now to help schools sort of quickly gather that information. And then the other thing to keep in mind is it's not so easy to say presto changeo, create a relationship with a kid you don't have it with, right? And so one of the things folks have learned is that one way to bridge that is to do actually interest surveys of both teachers and kids to find points of connection between them, and that relationship can form, that they have a shared hobby or interest, right? And this often leads to unexpected partnerships. The teacher and the student that both like anime, or that both like to knit, right? And who would have thought, right? But yet there it is, and that's a connection something they can talk about to then build that relationship. Next slide. All right. How do we get supportive peer groups? Many kids we talk to, especially in the middle grades, tell us that one of the main reasons they miss a day of school is because of the drama. And what they mean by that is drama with other students. And often this is a place where schools are a little hesitant. This is like kid world. It's sort of beyond me. We're going to make sure that the building is safe, that no one is overtly teased or bullied, that the classrooms are nice places to be, and the rest of it, we can't get our heads around. But again, the way supportive peer relationships happen is by giving kids shared experiences that enable those supportive peer relationships to develop, and also to happen across kids that don't necessarily automatically sort themselves together if we just leave it to the kids, right? So that's about rebuilding in many ways our student activity structures to be inclusive, and also to move away from a thing that sort of happened. It really was started way back with the 2008 recession, when we started having to charge fees sometimes to afford extracurriculars, and sometimes we kept those fees afterwards because they helped the budget, or we sort of said you had to earn your way into extracurriculars. And really it's the kids that are often the least connected to school, maybe don't have perfect attendance yet, that really need that extracurricular activity. So we really need to think about how we can get everyone engaged and not have it be a thing that's just for some kids that meet particular criteria. To do that, we're going to have to create some new activities. And the best way to do that is to involve students, especially middle and high school, but even older elementary students, in helping to create and figure out what these groups are, right? And we gave that example on Tuesday, if you were here, of the Mississippi High School, right, that created all these new positions on their sports teams to create a connection for folks that couldn't actually be on the team. So, right, the videographer, the photographer, the stats person, the drone operator, right? That's the way of sort of creating new structures and new ways to do things. And then another thing to keep in mind is community and service learning projects. And this is a good way, again, to just tap into some AmeriCorps resources and some AmeriCorps programs, right? Because it is through that joint idea of service together that, again, the kids can make meaningful supportive relationships among those they might not necessarily run into in the normal course of events. All right, next slide. This idea of pro-social activities, and kids feel more engaged when they feel that something they do in school is meaningful and actually is helping others. And this coincides with the other idea we had of like more peer mentorship and more peer support. So some folks do peer coursework and homework hotlines. Some schools do peer mentoring programs, right? This idea of homeroom captains, where older students support the attendance and belonging of younger students, right? 8th graders supporting 6th graders, 12th graders supporting 9th graders. And the other thing some schools have been thinking about are activities where like individual efforts collectively add up to a larger collective whole. So you could participate, often if it's even on your own time. It's sort of the modern equivalent of the knittings of the quilting circle, where everyone is quilting a square and you put them together and create a large quilt. There's many activities that are parallel to that. It's a way to create that meaningful activity, even if not everyone does it at the same time. All right. And finally, school is a welcoming place. Here it's critical to talk to students and family and understand and address concerns they have about sort of safety, transportation, the learning environment. These are often things where we sort of think are like, are peripheral to like the core things of, teaching and learning and academic growth, which really are job one. But if kids don't feel safe coming to school, if they don't have reliable transportation, if the building is hot or cold, right, that all undermines their sense of this is a place where I can be at and be comfortable and be welcome. And that's really a good place to get student voice and insight. And the final thing to remember is that school connectedness can be measured. You can establish a baseline for each of these, try to do some improvement, monitor your progress, see if you're making improvement, and keep modifying until you succeed. So, simple thing about how many kids have a relationship or no one, right? We talked about it, the stickers. I know the kid's story. I know the kid's name. Could quickly see, who's connected, who's not, who's in extracurriculars. You can do short 3 survey questions, right? Do you feel welcome? Are students supportive? Do you have opportunities to participate in school activities? Gives you quick information that you can keep asking multiple times in the year. All right, that's school connectedness. Another key prevention strategy is family communication and engagement. So if we go to the first slide, part A of this is family communication to really address information gaps. And this gets to when we talk to that one of the barriers is misperceptions and not understanding, the importance of regular attendance or even just how much days of school a child is actually missing. So families of chronically absent students often experience these information gaps, and those can act as barriers. And so there's ways to address this. So for example, Everyday Lab has done a lot of research on this, and they found the most common information gaps are that families don't know that their child's attendance is problematic. Most think their kids are like other kids, and whatever their kids' attendance is, it's average or above average, right? Chronically absent students' families report they don't know how to access additional support. So there's a barrier, and they don't really know who to talk to address it. As we've seen, they underestimate how much total days have been missed by the year, often by half. And then there's this thought that if the absence is excused, maybe it's not problematic. But we really know from the research that what's problematic is missing school and not being there on a regular basis, whatever the reason, right? So those are all key points that we need to share and sort of inform parents. So we go to the next slide. This gets this idea that many of you have heard of, and I know many of you are working on, of attendance nudges, right? And again, right, research shows that these effective nudges are a couple of things. One is that it's done consistently throughout the year. It's not one nudge and done. It's actually multiple nudges done strategically throughout the year. And in particular, when your data says we're coming up on a period when maybe lots of kids miss school, right? That's a good time to hit people with another nudge letter before that. And to be effective, people have learned they need to be personalized with actionable and relevant information. You need to deliver them by multiple communication modes. And it turns out that paper and mail still have a lot of legs in this area because people tend to keep that piece of paper and they can refer back to it and read it again. Whereas text messages can also be useful, but those text messages basically disappear after they've been seen once, right? So it's mixing up and having multiple modalities. The right language, written in an accessible level, and that really just gives us this clear information, how much has been missed, how that compares to the average, or if it's above or below average if true, and just reminding you the negative consequences in general, not this like scary thing about like your student will, life is compromised already. Like that's not going to work. And so those are some key things that have been learned about how to do effective sort of nudge letters. Next slide. Beyond communication is actually engagement. Right? That's even a deeper level beyond communication is engagement. That's really building out relationships with families. And again, here it's really recognizing that families are partners and experts in their own children, that we need to create ways of engagement, again, beyond the standard parent-teacher night or, standard things. We have to find a wider range of ways to parents and schools and kids to connect. We need this regular asset-based communication that's in a supportive tone of the goal of supporting the family so children can attend. And we really need often to be able to respond to the needs these parents will identify. We can't just sort of say, well, okay, now I understand why they're not coming, but there's not much I can do about it. And we know often there's going to be questions of safety and transportation and sometimes other resources they need access to. So often, some schools have done like family nights where they bring in all of the social service agencies to the school at all in one place and bring the families and parents in and actively try to connect those they know from these engagements need help with X, Y, and Z, and be that human connection between I have a relationship with you. Here are some folks that might help, doing it live in one place at all at one time, as opposed to saying, here's a number to call, go do it. All right. And then home visits, right? There's good evidence that home visits, if done right, can make a difference, again, for a targeted segment of kids. Many people have heard about the Connecticut LEAP program. That's a good model. It's also the parent-teacher home visit model is another one that many districts use. And they have some good evidence has been built up in the effectiveness of this, and they've identified 5 non-negotiable core practices, right? That the visits are voluntary and arranged in advance. Teachers are trained and compensated. The focus is on hopes and dreams, right? Not punitive, not worry-mongering. It's cross-section of students are visited, so it doesn't feel like, oh, we're the problematic ones that get a visit. And often it's good to have educators go in pairs so they can reflect and learn. All right. Last thing, we love our tools and resources. You're going to hear from Elk Grove Unified in a minute. They have some good materials that's linked there. Richmond Public Schools also has a robust family engagement and communication effort. And one aspect of that is the We Love You campaign as a way to really, make it a very positive, engaging outreach to parents. There's some good free resources, and a couple of things that were mentioned in those slides can be found there on how to do relationship audits and build the sense of belonging. The last thing I want to leave you with, and this can give you some moments of joy, which we often need these days, is there are a growing number of districts, either students or the districts have created sort of student voice videos where it's students giving, students in a way making the case for why schooling is so important. So there's a very nice link here to a video from a San Jose elementary school that's elementary school focused. That middle one is really middle and high school focused with humor, as using humor as a way to engage. And then there's a student produced example from a Tulsa high school, just to show you what's out there and to show you that and also this you can in fact use existing materials that other districts have created that may be just as good as investing in doing your own if you don't have one. So with that, I'm very excited to turn you back to Jen and to bring on folks from Elk Grove and Atlanta to show you good family engagement and communication strategies at work.
Thanks so much, Dr. Bob. As always, I feel like every time I hear from you, I learn something new, and I'm really excited to have the districts with us today to really illustrate some of the things that you shared with us today. So let's start our first district spotlight. Next, there we go, is Lisa Lavasser. Lisa, I'm so happy you're here with me. And again, I was thinking about our conversation as I was listening to Dr. Bob. Lisa is the director for the Department of Family and Community Engagement at Elk Grove Unified School District. And I would love for you to come off mute and join us here and share a little bit more about the work that you're doing, particularly as it relates to family and community engagement. Take it away, Lisa.
Right. Thank you, Jen. Thank you so much for having me. I thought I would start really quick with just a really brief background of where is Elk Grove Unified. So we are right outside of in California, right outside of Sacramento. We are 320 square miles. We are the largest district in Northern California and the 5th largest in the state of California. And we are incredibly beautifully diverse. And we have over 120 different languages spoken in our district. And our city and district are actually the second most diverse in the entire state. So I wanted to give you that background so you have an idea of kind of why we needed to do what we are doing to bring about success for our students and for our families. So as Jen said, I have the privilege of overseeing, a couple of departments, but one is family and community engagement. And so we knew the importance of this, and those that maybe didn't know the importance of it discovered during the pandemic how important families were to the equation of having successful students. And so when we were coming out of the pandemic, we knew going back to school that our families were a little nervous, were a little concerned about what it might look like and how it might work. So we decided to do the model that actually Bob mentioned earlier, parent-teacher home visits. It's a national organization that trains teachers and school site staff to do positive home visits. So we decided to do this coming back into the school year in 2021. So we did, over the summer, we called them welcome back to school visits. And we did over 5,000 of those welcoming students back to school visits. And teachers shared with us a couple of things. One, it was a game changer. They said that they have never felt so close to their families, had never really understood what their families were going through, what was important to them, until they did these visits. We really wanted to have a proactive approach to coming back and a proactive approach to attendance. We knew the research out there that said that it was didn't work with punitive approaches. So we really kind of wanted to change what we were doing. So K-12, we're a K-12 district. The visits were open to all TK-12 teachers. And our teachers just really, really bought in. And so it continued. So that was the first year. The next year, our teachers and our schools, we have 68 schools, wanted to continue. And again, the idea is it's voluntary. So not every school did this strategy, which is fine. We want it to be authentic. We don't want anyone going into someone's home or doing a Zoom visit and it not to be authentic. We didn't want them to feel forced to be there. So we continued with these visits. And as again, thank you, Bob, he said earlier, they're focused on hopes and dreams. They're focused on goals and really, any kind of questions parents might have. They're very positive and they help our families feel connected and build trust back to our, with our campuses. So what came from that was the idea that families needed more support. And it wasn't with academics necessarily. They really kind of felt comfortable in that area. What they needed support with was getting their kids to school, ideas on how to navigate social media and screen time. They wanted support with the stress and anxiety that this all produces and what was really stressful and anxiety with just the pandemic in general. So we started from that, listening to our families. We started what's called the Family Wellness Series. And you see that kind of an example of some of the workshops we hosted. I believe this was last year's workshop. So this has been going on for a couple of years now. It's all feedback from families. We know families won't show up if it's not relevant to them. It has to be relevant to them. So from our home visits, from our surveys that go out in numerous languages, families told us these were some of the topics that they wanted. And it changes every year. But as you can see, last year, these were some of the topics. Families wanted ideas on how to structure things to get their kids to school on time. They saw that their kids were stressed out. They felt that their kids were dealing with a lot of anxiety, which I think was a lot of it was through screen time and social media. So we brought in a yoga class and families loved that approach. We also brought in some students who were willing to kind of tell their story about what they wish their parents knew, what life was like in high school, what life is like in junior high. That was incredibly powerful to have a student panel focus on that and share kind of what life is like now, dealing with all the pressures that our students unfortunately are dealing with in society today. And then you can see the bottom one is an example of just understanding ACEs and how we heal from that, and providing families with really concrete, easy steps on how to deal with your kids who are navigating depression or anxiety or stress. So these are extremely well attended. And I will tell you what led from that was our families asked for this in Spanish. So we had people always available to interpret for these workshops, but what our families asked is, could we have it just in Spanish, in our native language, which is our number one language in our district. So we made that happen, and those have been overwhelmingly popular. And now those families are asking for some different topics for next year. So now we have kind of 2 different series going on, and it just has expanded to different family affinity groups in our district. So one other thing I wanna add to this is, so when something's working well, people hear about it, right? Thank goodness. So our families talk, and teachers and principals started hearing about these great opportunities. And so they started asking for professional development. So we started about 2 years ago, a professional development series focused on connecting with students and families to improve attendance. We saw that our chronic absenteeism numbers were through the roof, like never before. And we also knew that our teachers in the credential program, our administrators and their administrative credential program really don't get professional development focused on family engagement. They don't get professional development focused on attendance and how to make connections. So we wanted to fill that gap. So we created a 3-part series on how to connect with your students to improve attendance. We went through strategies on making positive phone calls, sending positive postcards, making sure simple things like knowing how to say one's first and last name. Simple things like that help students feel seen and heard and valued, and same with our families. So those really became well attended, and they were kind of broken up into 3 parts. They would come in the beginning over Zoom, have an activity, learn some strategies, and then they'd have 2 months to go practice those. They would come back, they'd talk about what worked, what didn't, we'd learn some new strategies, and then they go practice those. So that series continues to be very popular with all of our teachers, especially our new teachers and new administrators. And then one last thing from that, last year we have over 7,000 employees in our district, and we started our pre-service last year and this year solely focused on making sure students and families felt a sense of belonging and connectiveness. Because we know, as Bob said earlier, we know when that happens, our students are going to come to school more often. They're going to feel like they belong. They're going to feel seen, heard, welcomed on our campuses. And that's what we want. That's what helps them get out of bed every day and come to our schools. So all of that has really led to our numbers, our chronic absenteeism numbers going down, our attendance improving, and our social emotional climate and culture surveys really improving as well. So here you just see basically a little bit. I should have had you go earlier, sorry, Jed, but here's a couple of things that I already mentioned that we did. I highly recommend you going to that website. What I will do is share with you a video that our communications department created with one of our middle schools on the positive experience with parent-teacher home visits. That's it.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I'm going to go ahead. So appreciate it. And thank you for the question in the chat. Keep the questions coming. Depending on time now, we'll invite a little bit of question and answer. We'll also have time in our breakout groups to continue these conversations. So Again, thank you so much, Lisa. I'd like to bring Chelsea Montgomery to tell a little bit more about her work in Atlanta Public Schools, where she's the Assistant Superintendent of Student Services. And I'm super thrilled that you're here, Chelsea, to talk more about family communication.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Lisa, so much of that resonated. So I am thrilled to be coming up behind you. So we're going to just to tell you a little bit about Atlanta. Most people know where Atlanta is on a map, also the home of Delta, which has resonated with a few people lately. We have about 50,000 students. We are about 70% free and reduced lunch, 70% African American. So a very diverse district. Down here, we are also cut out of a county, which is a model that lots of districts have in the country. And I am here today to talk about multimodal communication. So we have been doing an okay job with chronic absenteeism. We did see a reduction after last year of 1,198 students considered to be chronically absent, really with traditional methods. But for us, that's not good enough. We have more work to do. So we are really upping our game and how we communicate and support our families for next year. We are first looking at, we were looking for an evidence-based tier 2 intervention, and preferably one that was low lift. So we looked to Everyday Labs to help us out, to send out both hard copy letters and text messages. This will also really help us reinforce the absences messages, excused or unexcused, they're still absences and they still matter. This is concise info, it's personalized info, so it's not just generic mailings and generic text messages. We're talking about the absenteeism of the parent-specific or guardian-specific student. Multilingual, easily readable at a 5th grade level. So the big thing for this, for us, is that this doesn't take time away from our social workers, our registrars, our attendance clerks. This is all automated and happens in the background. So you can have a tier 2 evidence-based intervention while also being able to prioritize time with families and in-person supports with our staff. So that's why we look to them to really have something that's just automated and happens. But we do know that text messages, letters, those levels of communication aren't enough. They can help us problem solve, but sometimes we're still going to need more. We are lucky here in APS. We have a social worker assigned to every single school. Some schools have more than one. That's not necessarily a model, so we are very fortunate. We also have a school nurse in every single school. Also very fortunate to have that as well, and they are all supporting absenteeism. We have a one-team model. We do not separate attendance with behavior, with academics, reading and math. If you have a concern about a student, they go to one team. So that, because students don't work that way. The behavior and mental health could be affecting attendance. Reading could be affecting mental health. Attendance could be affecting math. So we refer everyone to one team to really tease out and develop the best intervention plans for our students. And that also really helps us reinforce that all staff own attendance. Attendance cannot live just with a social worker, just with an attendance clerk. We have to all be all hands on deck and look at students that way. We are also changing the way that we offer support. I am a huge proponent. I have stood up the community schools model, but it is also very expensive. We have small schools in APS. We have shrinking enrollment in APS, just like a lot of urban districts do around the country. We are trying to take the best of the community schools model and try it in a centralized location. I don't know how it's going to turn out, but we are moving all of our student services central office staff to a different location where families can just easily park out front, walk in. What can we do for you? So we're basing it off that model. We don't know what's going to happen, but we can offer a lot more accessible way for families to access our central office staff, plus more events, more services, more one-pagers. We will also have someone over there that will help with Medicaid navigation, housing navigation, SNAP benefit navigation. We'll also be able to offer a lot more events like coat drives, shoe drives. These things are still happening in our schools, but is there a way for us to be more efficient and support our students and families to just come on over. It is on our train line, our bus line here in the city of Atlanta. So families can just walk right in. What do you need? We're here for you. Registration will be there. We also have tribunal in our discipline hearings over there, because let's be honest, the students that are at those discipline hearings often need all these wraparound supports too. So why not put it in the middle of our student support hub? So moving lots of things over there, we'll be able to do lots of work over there and be a lot more easily accessible to families. So we're extremely excited about not only having all the support at the local level, but then also tripling down on support at this new student and family support hub. And there we go.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. Chelsea, and Lisa, I'm both just really inspired by both of your stories. And I know that there may be some questions. I'm checking our time. We might have time for one question if there's out there. Thank you, Lisa, for putting that response in the chat. You also could put your questions in the chat and we can follow up there. I wanted to, I believe, Chelsea, you were willing to share. You have a Twitter account. I'm going to put that in here for everyone. I know Chelsea is also on LinkedIn. So that is great. And Lisa has email if you are interested too. So we can put that here. And I know that so much of the work that they're doing is also public facing. Chelsea, I'm right. You have a website coming up, but not quite ready yet. So folks could take another look for that, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. But Lisa's you saw in the chat, and again, they'll be in the slide deck for you as well if you want to check those out. Just checking. Thanks for your comments. I'm just checking the chat here. Great. Thank you so much. And thanks for the sharing of those resources, Chelsea. And yes, there was a question about the recording. So this will be available, as is the first recording from Tuesday. We'll do that and share that out with anyone who registered. And I believe the recordings will be posted on our website as well. Okay, well, it's your turn. So thank you again to Chelsea, to Lisa, and to so many of you who I know shared that you're doing some similar things through the models that you're adopting or have adopted. And now it's your turn to talk about those some more in our breakout groups. And so before I do that, just gonna